So to this video right here, this is going to be a quick overview of some geography and whatnot of Australia. So quick intro, just some stuff about it. It is the 6th largest country in the world. So it's a pretty big country, Australia, but it is the smallest of the continents. So if you take all of Australia and you lay it over the contiguous United States, the map down here, you'll see that it's about the same size. So if you don't count Alaska and Hawaii, it's about the same size as the U.S. Its current population somewhere around 18 million people, give or take. Just to put that in perspective, one little city here in the United States, New York, that has more people than all of Australia combined. It is the second driest continent in the world. It's famous for its outback, referred to kind of the wilderness, grassland, deserty type area of Australia. It's also famous for its barrier reef, which I'll talk about in a little bit. It's got rainforests, deserts, mountains. Basically, Australia has everything. One thing about it, though, is it is quite isolated, and that's going to cause the animals to look a little different than they do elsewhere. And you'll be looking at animals a little bit later. So the climates. To have a rainforest, to have desert, to have all this stuff, you got to have different climates. On the very, very top, Australia is equatorial, meaning it's near the equator, very hot, very humid. Below that is tropical, also very hot, very humid. That's the dark green on this map. Below that, you've got subtropical, which is still going to be pretty warm and a little bit of humidity. Then you've got your desert in the middle of Australia. You've got your grassland, which is the very light tan. The blue area here is called temperate. That's land that's not necessarily too hot, too cold. It's the better land usually to live in for what we're used to. Sorry, my circles got a little off here. Most of the people in Australia tend to live kind of along the coast areas here in the blue area, the temperate, and then the subtropical parts. In fact, if you look at this map, it shows you each dot is 2,000 people, so it shows you where the people are. And by the way, if you take all the Hmong people in Australia, combine them together, they'll equal about one dot. About 2,000 Hmong people in Australia. Before Europeans arrived, this is how many different territories there were in Australia. It's 250 different territories, each one with a different Aboriginal tribe. The Aborigines are the native people of Australia. So every little inch of Australia belonged to somebody. Today, here are the territories. Western Australia, Northern Territory, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, and inside of New South Wales, there's a little circle you don't see on this map called ACT. It's Australia Capital Territory. And that's it. Those are the parts. So they went from 280 to 8. Sorry, 250 to 8. And here's where most of the Aborigines live today. Used to have all of Australia. Now they're put onto these reservations. All right, some breakdown, some of the big important things in Australia. You get the Great Barrier Reef, which I'll show you in the next slide. Mountains, which I'll show you coming up, and the desert. So the Great Barrier Reef, there's a picture of it on the bottom here. It's a giant living rock, basically, out in the ocean. It's full of different things that have kind of grown onto these rocks, and these things are living. It's a great place to find fish and other organisms that are living in the ocean. Boats will take you out there, and you can swim around it and see all sorts of stuff. If you were to stand on the barrier reef, you're not supposed to stand on it because you're going to damage it. The water might only be up to your knees or maybe your hips. It's not very deep. That's why it's so light blue there. And then where the boats are, That's just like a sudden drop-off. I have been swimming by barrier reefs, and it's just really awesome how deep it is and how much stuff is around there. This barrier reef, there's a map of it here. It's over 1,200 miles long. It's the largest living structure in the world. It's taken like 1 million years for it to grow to what it is right now. And it's home to a ton of different living things in the ocean. It's a great place to go swimming. Boats will take you out there. If you go to Australia, they'll make you have a buddy. You swim out there with your buddy. You can look at all sorts of stuff. All right, so mountains. All these red parts here, these are mountains. And then the yellow part is obviously leading up to the top of the mountain. When the Europeans come, they come from the east. So they hit these mountains here. And for a long time, that stops them from expanding in. Something kind of similar happened in the United States when the 13 colonies settle. Some mountains kind of hold them back for a little while. In science class, you might have studied this, that there's a relationship between the weather and the mountains causing rain and lots of vegetation on one side and then a desert on the other side. If not, just know that when you leave the mountains here, right in the middle of Australia, it's a lot of desert. And that's why we have this. Alright, so some extremes. There's a mountain in Australia that can have snow on it 24/7. Just every minute of every day, 365 days a year, there can be snow there. It's over 7,000 feet tall. There's one desert, just one, called the Great Victoria Desert. It's 4% of all of Australia. Put all the deserts together, 20% of Australia is desert. So that means most people are going to be living in that other 80%. You got multiple rainforests. The Gondwana is one of the big famous ones. You've got the Outback, which is your grass dryland. If you've ever been to North or South Dakota, that's kind of what the Outback looks like. It's dry, not a whole lot of rain. There are a lot of animals and plants if you know what you're looking for. Grassland is great for cattle and sheep farming, but not really for a whole lot of farming of plants. We're not worried about vocab. So here's some pictures of different parts of Australia. People get this idea that Australia is nothing but desert. That's wrong. Yes, there is the desert there, but I mean, look at what we've got. That's your video. That's your little introduction to Australia.